Draftit supports metric and imperial units, and the default setting is for millimeters. You can change the unit settings using this button on the Views and Settings ribbon. Alternatively, you can click on the Units section of the status bar here. The first field in the box is the one we are interested in at the moment. The other fields control rounding or precision of the text on dimensions, dynamic dimensions, and also the cursor increment on dynamic dimensions. If we have a look at the options in the Units box, we can see 7 different settings. Inputting values when using any of the 3 metric units or decimal inches is straightforward. Just type in the size, i.e. 3.5, and this is either 3.5 millimeters or inches depending on the current units. Let's look at the 3 other unit settings. We'll start with fractional inches. When you change units, you will notice a few obvious changes. Firstly, any dimensions on the drawing are automatically converted, and the equivalent rounding accuracy has been set in the new units. Secondly, the status bar reflects the change. And third, any dynamic dimensions, such as when you are in XY mode, also show the new units. You can see this now as we start to draw a line and press F8 to switch to XY mode. You can see that the cursor steps every 1/16 of an inch. If you want to change this, go back to the unit setting and change the second value, here, like this. And now the step is every 1/8 of an inch. Now, let's look at how we input fractional inches. As we are drawing a line, let's press an arrow key, say the right arrow, to go to an input box. You will see that the distance is set to 0 inches. Let's say we want the line to be 3 inches long. It's easy. We can just type 3 and press enter or click OK. You may or may not have noticed the quote mark which was added as we accepted the value. So the line is now drawn 3 inches long. Let's undo that and start drawing another line. Rather than drawing lots of lines to help us demonstrate the input formats, we will just use the Tab key to cycle through the fields of the box. If we do this, Draftit processes the value entered. For example, if we type 5 in here and hit the Tab key, you can see that the quote mark has been added. You don't have to add the quote mark, we are just demonstrating how Draftit interprets what you're typing in. Obviously we can type in full units, i.e. 3, 4, 5, etc. But what if we want fractions? Let's try it. So we type 1/2. Now if we press Tab, you can see Draftit understands that we mean 1/2 an inch. Let's try a few more. Easy. But what if we want, say, 2.5 inches? That's also easy. Just put a space between the full units and the fraction. So 2 space and 1/2 and hit Tab. That works. Just put a space in. If you don't, this will happen. If there is no space, Draftit thinks you mean 21/2, i.e. 10.5 inches. So this works well for fractional inch values like this. But it's far easier to type in decimal values sometimes. For example, 1.5 is easier to type than 1 space 1/2. What happens when we type in a decimal value? Well, Draftit converts it, so you can mix the formats, whichever is easier. The same is also true if the units are set as decimal inches. You can type in fractions. Now let's look at fractional feet and inches. The only difference to fractional inches is the fact that we can input both feet and inches. We just need to understand that DraftIt wants the feet to be input first, and we use the apostrophe character to indicate that this value is feet and not inches. So we type 1 apostrophe space 3. It doesn't matter whether you leave a space after this apostrophe, it's enough to tell the system that the next value is inches. Like this, type 1 apostrophe 3. Now we need a space here if we want a fraction, like so. Let's quickly look at decimal feet and inches now. We input feet in the same way, so 2 apostrophe is 2 feet, and then 2.5 gives us 2 feet 2.5 inches as a decimal value. As before, you can see that we can enter the part inch value as a fraction as well. So 2 apostrophe space 2 gives us 2 feet and 2 inches. And then we can enter the half inch as a fraction, and it is converted to a decimal.